Hey, I'm up late at night once again. Didn't really feel like sleeping after role playing, so I figured that I would start a random video, ask somebody what's something I should talk about for a random video, and I got Spider-Man back to the topic. And as a storyteller, I find Spider-Man really fascinating. He was mostly talking about video games. I don't play a lot of Spider-Man video games online. I'm increasingly having less video game time to play, so mostly my time's been eaten up recently. I've been playing Destiny and Pokemon Go. Yeah, okay, guilty. But something I could talk about as Spider-Man that I find really interesting is, as a storyteller, what makes Spider-Man really popular. For a long time, late 80s, early 90s, X-Men and Spider-Man were the only magazines making Marvel any money at all. Most of their other lines had sold out, but these two are constantly rebooted and people are telling new stories. More than anything else in the Marvel Universe, X-Men and Spider-Man are the most popular. And, well, why? What makes these stories so interesting? So as a storyteller, I thought I'd take a minute and talk about what makes Spider-Man such an excellent character. The fundamental holy grail in storytelling is the feels, right? The more you can empathize with a character, the more you can understand and cheer for them and celebrate their victories, and the more that their losses hurt, and the more that you can hope, the more you can identify with any character, the better off you are, the better you're going to like the character, the better that character is from a storytelling standpoint. So what makes Peter Parker and Spider-Man so accessible and so awesome? And if you're going to tell a story like me, it's something you can think about like professionally. If you are looking for stories to write, maybe you're a kid, maybe you're, in your 20s, you're still consuming this stuff, right? Or if you never grew up kind of like me, you're still consuming this stuff. Most of my friends have never quit. It's one of the things of our generation. We still like comic books. We still like the video games. We never hit that point where we consider ourselves too serious for this stuff. And we work full time, and most of my friends have degrees. I work in manufacturing, and I write books, and I teach martial arts. I still love this stuff. Most of the martial arts instructors I know are power gamers, which I find really interesting. I trained with a guy who was a play tester for Pathfinder. I was like, "Do you know Pathfinder?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I helped test it." Okay, I am among nerds. I belong. So what makes Spider-Man so awesome? First of all, Spider-Man, the easiest thing is Spider-Man does best when Spider-Man is youngest. There was great reviews about the new Spider-Man in Captain America Civil War. And one of the easiest things is the Spider-Man story starts in high school. So he's automatically got a lot of things to relate to that, kids can read, and everybody can remember high school in junior high, because these were really formative. The stuff that happened 20 years later doesn't seem like such a huge deal, but it made such an impression in the behaviors and the attitudes that we cultivated in high school and in junior high kept us going for the rest of our lives, and they showed up unless we had some real major change in our lives, like military service or marriage, and usually until something huge. These go so, but we always remember the crises and the tests and the trials that showed or set the pattern, either showed us who we were or taught us how to be, and that carried through for so many years in our life. And Spider-Man's right at that age that we can all remember. Most of the people who read him either are that young, or dealing with parents and dealing with friends and dealing with school. And you add all of this onto the superhero thing, and you've just brought that character that much closer to you, that much closer to your real life, and you can understand, watching in Captain America Civil War, watching Peter, he didn't have money, so he had the resources to build stuff out of discarded computers he got out of dumpsters. Not only is that, of something that a lot of people can relate to, with the economy being kind of for the last 20 years, but also particularly the last 10. But also, now when you pull along with, I can identify with that problem, then it pulls you along with the victory. So Spider-Man has to deal with school bullies, and when we see him overcome school bullies, then we can imagine that was us, or it feels kind of like that was us. And feeling along with the character is what makes a character really great. It's what makes it matter and what makes it most accessible that it can be. Sarah Jane, right? That's her girlfriend. When he's got the crush on the girl that's the most beautiful girl in school, and he's trying to figure out getting the guts to ask her out, and we've all been there. Where you feel like you might run away screaming instead, but it's worth at least a try, right? And he is discovering his own powers. A lot of the other superheroes, in the various mythologies, they get an instruction manual. Even the X-Men have a lot of the same things going for them that Spider-Man does in terms of the characters start usually around puberty. They have to deal with school. They have to learn how to deal with friends. They're figuring out who they are and what they can do and who they want to be based on through the trials and the tribulations that they go through. And that's awesome. I love that part of storytelling. And that's part of storytelling has been around since the Odyssey. As Odysseus is trying to get home, his son is a teenage boy, maybe late 20s by the end of the story, and he's traveling around finding out who his father is from the people who fought alongside him, and hearing and gaining all this information. And he's figuring out who he is, so when he turns home, he helps his father save their family together. So this is, and that story is 2,500 years old, easy, if not 3,000 years old. So the idea of growing up, learning to stand beside heroes, figuring out who you are, that's awesome, but most of us don't get an instruction manual, As much as our parents love us, they don't always know exactly what's going on in our lives or what's going on in somebody else's lives. Spider-Man's right there, his aunt, he can't tell. His uncle really tied in. His uncle's death is really tied in. So two of the things that make Spider-Man really popular. One, he's got all the same teenage experiences that we're either going through or we remember very, very vividly. Two, he has to grow up, even if it's not physically because he's already very strong. He has to bumble his way through like we all do growing up. Like we all have to figure it out. Very few of us, we're not trained anymore like knights where they handed you off from 8 until 14 with the people who knew exactly what they needed to train you in, and they handed you off at puberty to 21 to someone who knew exactly that he was supposed to make you this kind of man and teach you these kind of duties. That's gone from our society. We've kind of figured out by trial and error, and Spidey has to do that too. The third thing that makes Spidey really awesome is among the supers, right? Among the mutants and the real, in a universe that has the Thor and the Hulk and Iron Man, Spidey is not that strong. One of the big themes, he's strong enough to get in trouble. Right? He's got enough ability to get in trouble, and he's immediately over his head almost all the time. The Rhino's way stronger than him. The Scorpion has better insect powers than he does. The Vulture, the Hobgoblin, the Goblin and the Hobgoblin, they've got better tech than Spidey. So he's always outdone in one of his things by his bad guys, and he always has to come through it. By being clever. An old apologist named Josh McDowell told me this once when I was in high school. One of these things I remembered, right? That I've remembered all the rest of my life. We like an underdog, but we love the top dog. And because Spidey's at the low end of the power spectrum, he gives us both of those thrills. He is the top dog in his little pond, and he has enough trouble that he gets thrown into these big ponds and gets to be the underdog too. And he typically gets through by being clever. And resourceful and outthinking things, right? His brain is really Spidey's super weapon. Most of the people he fights are stronger than him, so he can't do the Hulk thing and just smash his way through. Most of the people with special abilities have more special abilities than him, so he can't just throw an ape load of powers at them like Onslaught or Apocalypse, and so he's always got to be the one who figures out the weakness, who figures out the motives, and if he doesn't figure it out, he doesn't win. And then, so we get both the top dog and the underdog thing, and that's one of the things that makes Spidey great. Spidey goes through all these troubles and stresses, but he shows a great example. He's always, he deals with it with humor. Even when he's down, he cracks wise. He is one of the biggest smartasses in the Marvel universe. And the most consistently, even though everything always goes wrong for Spider-Man. He's one of those characters where they would break the formula if he ever was financially successful, or he can't even be too famous too much of the time because he's got J. Jonah Jameson constantly tearing him down and ragging on him and making him look bad. He's got a whole newspaper dedicated to running him through the muck, and he's got to work for them. And that's another thing that is part of being a young adult that keeps this theme that everybody can relate to, is having a boss who doesn't appreciate you, right? We've all been there. And honestly, as you get up there, you grow older, you look back at high school kids and kind of go, yeah, I had a lot to learn, and I can kind of understand why people didn't automatically respect me. But Spidey constantly gets the public's respect, and so you get to once again have a shared problem and then follow him. He gets to overcome it, and it feels a little bit like you get to overcome it along with him. And getting the feels, having that emotional connection, is what makes a good story. And I think part of the thing is that makes Spidey a little more appealing is he's the everyman. Right? Yeah, he's a smart kid from a poor family who works hard, and that describes a ton of people. Thor was born to power. The Green Lantern was chosen because his great morals and his great steadfast will. Superman had crystals and he had been prepared forever. Spidey got his powers through a freak accident. This is one of the things that makes Daredevil as cool too. Is it happened, he didn't ask for his powers, he didn't come through them, he wasn't born to them like the X-Men. It was a total random chance, and he owns it, he overcomes it, and that's another thing that makes Spidey really great. So the things that I think make Spidey awesome, he has the common troubles that we're either going through as kids or we remember from our own childhood. He bumbles and fumbles his way through, growing up as a hero in addition to growing up as a kid. And that's something that we've all experienced, that almost all of us have experienced. He gets to be simultaneously the top dog with awesome powers and the underdog because almost everybody has more powers than him. And he is literally every man. He isn't born or trained to it. He teaches himself this, and this is all that he does. That's who he is, and he overcomes. So those are the four things that I think make Spidey a really great character. And if you are writing stories and you can capture these elements, common things that people can feel identify with, that can go on to victories that we can feel like we can share, that makes a good character. If you can show character growth through struggle, that is really important. It isn't enough to just jump to the next movie or the next episode or the next season where everybody's way more powerful. It matters a lot more to grow along with the character, and they do that. If your character can be the best and outgunned, both the top dog and the underdog at the same time, that is an awesome character thing, and that's something they hang on to. And if your character is somebody who's everyman, we can all imagine that could happen to us, right? That could be us. that helps us identify with the character, and identifying with the character, that is 100% of what gives you the feels, and the feels are what makes a great character. Spidey has all of those things. I'm always going to be happy that people are going to, people have favorite Spider-Mans and their least favorite Spider-Mans. I really liked the 1980, maybe 1982 Spider-Man, where the poor kid had spandex and they had ropes tied to his wrist bracelet. That was the level of technology they had to tell the story when I was a little kid, and Spidey was still able to do it. And this is why, unlike Superman, who's mostly just loved by little kids because he always wins, he's never really in any real danger, because all he's got to do is punch it. More like Batman, more like Daredevil. He is one of these characters who is going to keep going and is going to be popular. It is popular to people among many ages and will continue to be so because he has these great storytelling elements. So that's my take on Spider-Man. That's my random rant for the week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like my take on stories, feel free to check out some of my novels. They're in the links on my page channel description. If you disagree on my take on Spider-Man, or you have a different superhero or a different kind of story you want to hear me talk about, by all means, comment in the description below. I'll check it out, and if it's something I have time and I can do, I will totally leave a reply. Alright, so this is me, Bruce, and thanks for listening to my random rant for the week. Signing out.